In a video from Sears that he made in 2013, he shared a very interesting point that for me was a beautiful shift in my journey when I had that realization. It can be a little challenging at first to realize that, but I feel when we start on this journey, something that it can become a little obvious to us. But I wanted to share the quote with you. He said, "My experience is that most of us don't need to learn how to become a kid again. We need to learn how to become a kid for the first time. Just because we used to be small and young doesn't mean that emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually we ever had a childhood." We've all had different experiences, and of course now as an adult we know that everything we went through had a purpose and a meaning behind it, and a reason why we went through it. And there's a lot of wisdom that comes out of our childhoods when looked at from a different perspective, once we're an adult, once we've healed a lot of the things that have happened. And even knowing that doesn't mean that it wasn't challenging, it wasn't hard, it wasn't what at the time felt like more than what we could have handled. But even in my own life, I noticed that I was extremely shy as a kid. Incredibly shy. I remember we used to go to birthday parties within my own family, so I had a lot of cousins, even cousins' birthdays and that kind of thing. And my parents used to say that my sister and I, we wouldn't leave their side. It was a big party, like all our cousins were playing and hanging out by the swings or doing something else. And I remember me kind of like staying close to my mother. And there's many reasons for that, many insights that I've realized along the way. But obviously there's a part of me that, looking back, I do kind of feel like, did I even have a childhood? Like, it did feel like I missed out on a lot of what a childhood is supposed to be, or the things that we expect that we would experience as a kid. And I do have many beautiful memories, but there's so much that I've been kind of hard on myself for being so incredibly shy and, like I said, quote unquote, like missing out on so much of my childhood. And what I wanted to, a journey that I went through, and what I want to invite you to consider is, what are the things that you truly loved to do as a kid? I remember I used to love rollerblading. Around my grandmother's house, we had like many different paths that we could take. It was my grandmother's house, and then my great grandmother, so her sister, and I think I'm using the right term, right? Great grandmother? No, great aunt, I think. Sometimes I confuse those in English. But it was my grandmother and her sister, so there was a little kind of like a garage kind of thing in the middle. And we used to go all around, like kind of both houses in rollerblades with my sister and my cousins. And I loved it. And I was like really fast and really good at turns and everything. And it was amazing. I enjoyed it so much. And eventually, as I grew up, I didn't even notice or realize that I stopped doing it for some reason. And then I was doing a trip, one of the trips that I did around the country in my car, and I was staying in a hostel in New Orleans. And I met a guy from Australia. I think his name was Felix. Very good looking guy. He loved kind of going out, and he was kind of like a ladies' man. A lot of ladies were interested in him. Had a fun personality, very good looking guy. And for some reason the topic came up that he loved roller rollerblading, but he stopped doing it because he thought it was, and this is how he labeled it, he thought he was gay, and that people would think he was gay. And that was a very interesting one for me to receive, because obviously I grew up in a culture, and I feel like actually most cultures this happens, where as men we definitely try to be so manly, and like there's so much joking around that, around people's sexuality, that you don't want people to even question your sexuality in any way. So it's funny how sometimes we stop doing things that we love for the fear of the possibility of someone thinking that, like in this case, he was gay. Or in my case, I think there was some of that too. And I remember another experience that I had when I used to live in Martha's Vineyard. I didn't really love any of the gyms there, so eventually I stopped paying for gym memberships, and I worked out at home, and I went to different parks or things like that. And there was a playground pretty close to my house that I enjoy going to. And when I go to a playground, and I recommend this actually to people, like, it really does bring the inner child out a bit, and the inner child kind of wants to play. When I see like a swing set, it reminds me of being in my grandmother's house, playing with my cousins, or even just by myself, but just hanging out in the swing set and having so much fun. So when I go to a playground, my inner child definitely kind of gets very happy and joyful and wants to come out and play. And I remember I was working out, listening to some good music, and I just wanted to get very silly and just kind of like start dancing and being very silly and playful. But I would always just like look around first to see if anyone was around. And the funny thing is that it's like a very open place. So even if I didn't see anyone nearby, people could be seeing, like looking at me from like a house or a different, like an area that I couldn't really see them, but I knew they would be able to see me. And there was so much fear around being like my true, real, honest, authentic self, because of that fear of judgment that I've dealt with most of my life, and I still do. So I invite you to compassionately look at the things that you used to love to do as a kid. Everything you can think of, even if it was painting, drawing, like music, dancing, singing, acting. So many kids love like acting and being playful in that way, right? What are the many things that you loved to do as a kid? And even if you notice, like that's what I said, compassionately, even if you notice that you stopped doing those because of a fear of judgment, I would invite you not to beat yourself up for that right now. One of the things that I share pretty often is that those coping mechanisms that we use to survive our childhood, or even like middle school years, high school years, even college, and even now, we have coping mechanisms that it's only that part of ourselves that just wants to keep us safe. That's all. Just wants to keep us safe. It's not trying to hurt you. It's not trying to sabotage you. It's not trying to make you miserable. It's not trying to, in my case, I always felt like socially awkward. Like it's just parts of me trying to keep me safe and allow me to survive and navigate my journey in the ways that my inner self, my inner child, based on my experiences and my beliefs and my everything, how it felt that it could keep me safe. And I obviously did go through a phase of like beating myself up for that and feeling all kinds of things, because I stopped doing what I truly love due to the fear of judgment. So if you need to go through that experience, that's fine. I'm not trying to stop you from that or trying to get you to avoid an experience that could be quite helpful sometimes. Sometimes we need to go through that. challenging feeling with that. But I invite you to, you can even make a list. You can make a list of the things. For me, it was like rollerblading, like I said. It would be going out on a swing set, on a playground, being silly. Any little thing, like sometimes, for example, for me, I love going to the movie theater by myself. That's like a little treat for me sometimes that I do. If there is a good movie that I want to watch, and I am kind of a little hermit in some ways, like, which, by the way, when I looked at my human design and now I understand that part of me more, I was able to accept that part of me more, welcome that part of myself more, appreciate it, love it more. And when I realized I love spending time by myself, I go to I've been doing this for so many years. I like going to the movie theaters by myself. So that's another thing that I enjoy doing. But even some people, it's actually beneficial to write out a list. And for some people, you actually do need to schedule it in your calendar. That's not my style, but I know many people recommend it because it does work for some people. But if you need to schedule that in, like just go to the playground or a movie night by yourself, like a little date, or with someone too, of course, if you want to do that. But any little activity that you enjoy. It can be as simple as just putting on some good music in your room, in your house, singing out loud, dancing, getting silly, like whatever feels like you're allowing your inner child to come out and play. What I've noticed, and I've used this analogy because I feel like it truly captures this experience, that those things that we really want to do in our lives but we keep suppressing for the fear of judgment, it's the same as trying to keep a beach ball underwater. You can hold it down there for quite a bit. The funny thing is that the more we try to suppress it and push it down deeper into the water, when we can't hold it anymore and we let go, the crazier the jump is now from that ball that was kind of kept in there for so long. So sometimes suppressing those things and trying to hide those things and trying to control that desire to be a kid again, or be a kid for the first time, like JP Sears said in the video, being a kid for the first time. What are just even 1 to 3 activities that you can tell, that you can feel that if you do, it could instantly shift the way you feel in that moment, and it would allow your inner child to come out and play? 1 to 3 things that you can do.